Hi, and welcome back to the Global Holistic Podcast. This is The Conversation Continues. And today we are talking about body language and the silent cues we give one another and how to learn to use body language and social cues to your advantage. All right. So we are talking about the biggest part of communication, actually. And I was shocked when I remember first reading this, that we actually in communication receive more messaging from the person we're talking to through body language and social cues than through the words that are actually coming out of our mouth. So this is when we're talking about communication, and we're starting to enter what I call our communication series that we do once a year. So this will be the first of a couple of podcasts on how to become the best communicator you can be, because communication is the bridge between people in our lives, professional relationships, intimate relationships, friendships, family. Communication is the bridge between our two worlds, right? And so we have to get very good at communication. And it's also, coming into this from being an attorney and all the work I did in conflict resolution, learning how to communicate more effectively is by far the biggest bang for your buck if you are one of those people who wants to downsize how much conflict or arguments you have in your life. Because communication, when we talk about playing defense, how we show up in each conversation, it can be a game changer in building healthy relationships, but also minimizing conflict, right? We can't control how someone else shows up in a conversation, but we definitely can change how we show up and control how we show up. So where do we want to start today? How have you helped coach in communication? I know this is one of your specialties, is coaching and relationship coaching. So how do you coach your clients in learning to use these kind of silent, nonverbal cues?
Well, it's look what I'm doing right now. Do you notice that I'm kind of leaning in, because I'm so interested in what you're saying, and I have a smile on my face and there's eye contact. These are signals that we're sending to the person that we're speaking to, that we're actually paying attention. So if I'm kind of looking down, while you're talking, you might get that impression that I'm not quite interested in what you're saying. Or what if I'm sitting here, like this? That might send an unconscious message that, maybe I'm either feeling insecure, or maybe I'm upset, but I'm definitely blocked off. So one of the things that I'll start with is paying attention to your posture in conversation. So even if you're tired, or even more so, then you'd want to like sit with your spine straight. If somebody's speaking to you, or if you're speaking to someone else and you notice they're kind of like this, what signal does that send? So basically what I'm hoping we can cover today is just a couple of tips to help you, send off the message that you're present, that you're listening, and that what the other person's saying is important. So posture and leaning, even a little bit forward, could be a slight smile, or if they're saying something that you're agreeing with. And then what else did I do? Sometimes you'll notice when Gina is speaking, I'm going like this because I'm agreeing with what she's saying, or I'm giving her validation. Now, this is something that's interesting, though, because you could actually nod your head when somebody is speaking to you and you don't necessarily agree with them. And it's still okay, because what you're doing is you're going, I'm listening. And you're not necessarily saying, I'm agreeing with you, but you're like, okay, I hear you. I hear you. So a positive nod can be something that is as simple as giving that message that, I have space for you and I'm listening. So those are a couple of things. And eye contact, making sure we're not like looking around the room. That's uncomfortable when you're speaking to somebody and, they're doing this. So be conscious of that too. Those are a couple of tips that I give my clients, like when we're talking about body language and helping the conversation and helping that other person feel like you care.
Mm. And, really what we're talking about is like clues that we give one another. It's like the secret sauce of interacting with each other. And it's funny because, eye contact's a funny thing that I get a lot of questions from my clients that I do communication, counseling, or coaching with, or I work with a lot of people on the spectrum too, and just kind of interacting. And then also, of course, in conflict resolution and couples counseling. But it's like the sweet spot of eye contact where it's not too much eye contact and it's not too little. Because if we have too much eye contact, it can make the other person feel uncomfortable. And if we have too little eye contact, it can make the other person feel like you're not listening. So finding that sweet spot. And then
Yeah.
exactly what you said is kind of like phase one, pay attention to your body. And I'm gonna add a second part to this, and it's gonna be a paradox of what I'm about to say. Pay attention to your body and don't overanalyze someone else's. So just because somebody's sitting back like this doesn't mean they're
Don't
not
make an
interested in
assumption.
what you're saying. Or just because they're like this, I work with teenagers, and I had this one teenager say, well, I was at church and I got in trouble this week. I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, I was listening, but everybody said I was being rude in church. And I said, well, what were you doing? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, show me how you were sitting. And so she kind of like, slouched over and, started moving her knee a lot. And I said, well, what's going on there? And she said, well, the chair was really uncomfortable. My back really hurt. I actually was
Yeah.
really interested in what they were talking about that day. My back just didn't have the support. So I was just kind of leaning in. And so I said, okay, well, that's what happened here. They misjudged your body language, but now you
Yes.
know, and that can be a superpower for you now when you go to college, when you're in a job interview, that your posture matters, because if you're going to hunch forward and shake your knee, the person on the other side is going to think you're not listening. So let's use this as a teaching tool. So there's two parts of that. Be very attuned in how you're showing up with your body language, but don't overanalyze the other person's, because it may not mean what you think it means, right? And there's a couple of things that you can do depending on what kind of relationship you're in. So body language is going to change. Ultimate body language is going to change if you're in a job interview, or you're talking to your boss, or you're on a date, or you're talking to a family member, right? So you always want to kind of start with what's the relationship dynamic. It's always nice to have your shoulders facing forward, because that's just really nice. It's open, right? Palms open. When we're closed off like this, it does seem like we don't really want to be there, or we don't want to communicate. But a simple trick that you can do if you want to, even in an interview or even with somebody that you want to give the other person power, and this is one of those ways to get people to like you, because it's funny, but people want to feel like they're the powerful one in the relationship, even if they don't know it, is if you just tilt your head to the side and nod when you're listening. Because what we're doing here is we're exposing a very vulnerable part of our body when we were, predators can attack and eat you here. So when you expose your neck in this way, you're signaling to the other person that you feel safe with them and they're in control. So that's a fun little trick, on a date, if you're listening, just kind of tilting your head a little bit and pulling your hair back if you're a female, or if you're a guy, if a woman is talking and you want her to relax, because you're starting to see that maybe she's feeling that you're not respecting her or something like that, and you sense that this might be about control, then just tilting your head a little bit and exposing this part of the neck can be very helpful. And another nice way to start a conversation or just make somebody feel at ease is just waving. When we expose our palms, and you think about this from an evolutionary perspective, we're showing we don't have a weapon. We're saying, hi, palm free. So when we show our palms, this is another way to submit to somebody, right? So we're saying, hi, double wave. So when you come in, even if you know the person, the first 10 to 30 seconds is going to set the pace of that day, right? So if you come in kind of like steaming because you have like, hard drive getting there, there was traffic, you're setting the tone for that meeting, versus even if you had a hard day, don't let them see you sweat. You can come in, hi, hey, everybody, how's it going? With a little bit of a smile, and that's going to help elevate the conversation as well. So really just being mindful that you're not bringing into the conversation anything that you don't mean to bring into the conversation, right? And then tone. So let's move so we got body language. What's your body doing? Be careful, to
Yeah.
be open, don't be closed off, be aware, nod your head, active listening skills. But also tone. matters so much. And in couples counseling, I'm amazed at how many people aren't aware of their tone. And that's why couples counseling can be very powerful, because there's a third party saying, whoa, your tone
Oh.
sounds very, you're
Yeah.
saying I'm sorry, but your tone sounds very dismissive and sarcastic. So, because you'll hear someone go, well, I just said I'm sorry. I'm sorry, okay? And it's like, whoa, okay, your words say I'm sorry. Like if I was AI and I was typing this up, it says I'm sorry. But your tone is telling us, it suggests that you don't mean it. And now here's the thing where they might mean it. They actually might really be sorry. But for us listening to it, it can take away the power of what we're trying to say. And same when we're the person doing the apology, be mindful of your tone, and not just with apologies in general, right? If call somebody, call a friend or a sibling and you're having a rough day, hey, how's it going? And you're kind of like, meh, 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 meh. That person's like, whoa, did I do something? Are you are you okay? He's like, yeah, you're fine. Why are you saying that? It's like, well, you sound like you're upset. Are you upset? Right. So that's the thing where we can really pay attention to our tone and the quality of our tone, the level of our tone, and make sure it matches the situation that we're in appropriately. You may be a high talker, you may be a low talker. So just really checking in with that. Some people whisper when they talk. They don't mean to. They're just kind of like more soft and timid like this. And they might be a baller in the boardroom, but if they show up to a business meeting and they're talking like this, no one's really going to take them seriously, no matter how smart they are, right? And so you want to make sure that your tone and your volume matches your intention in that conversation. There's a time and a place for soft. Maybe if you're parenting a child, there's a difference in coming in stern with a high volume, or are you okay, honey? How was school today? Like it's okay to be soft sometimes, but just looking at it with the context. So we want to pay attention to our body language. We want to pay attention to our tone. We want to pay attention to our eye contact. And also if we're subconsciously eye rolling, that's a big one. Like, in fact, this conversation, this topic came up from a client who came through. We certify life coaches, and if you haven't checked out our courses, check them out online, because we offer a lot of wonderful courses and we offer a communication series. But one of the life coaches we were certifying, how this originally came up, is she said, what happens when you're working with a client or you're working with a couple where their tone sounds like they're bored or they're exasperated, or they're going, kind of making you feel like they're upset, but they're saying I'm fine. And so that's how this whole conversation started evolving in how we've put together our communication courses, of how it's really important not to overanalyze the social cues, but it's also important to pay attention to the social cues, right? Because if
That
I was
fine line.
Right. If I was doing a live talk right now and I saw everybody kind of like slunched over and falling asleep versus like at the edge of their seat, like taking notes, I know
Right.
I lost the audience, and I need to figure, kind of switch gears or kind of mix things up a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah. So there's a lot of tips and tricks here, and it's one of my favorite topics because I feel like communication is just so important.
It is so important. And we do take for granted how we are communicating with our body language, with our facial expressions, and with our tone. Um, even checking in with your body language for yourself, because there's studies done that, when we're feeling sad or when we're feeling down or when we're feeling overwhelmed, we tend to bring our shoulders in and slouch. And I remember being, very young, so in my late teens, and I had a teacher say, go ahead and take your shoulders back, kind of lift your chest, and see if you can feel bad right now. And it was a fun little exercise because there was something to, just taking the shoulders back, lifting up, and, chin parallel to the floor. There's something that helps you feel better. So even your posture for yourself and your own mood can be, worth its weight in gold. And then the other thing I just want to plant the seed before we finish is one of our main ways of communicating takes away our ability to check in with body language, and that's our texting. And we do so much texting. So keep in mind, we're not getting the social cues. We're not getting
That's
any
right.
information, how it's being received. So please, with your texting, be a little bit more mindful how you write it and how it just might land. Whenever you can soften it, soften it.
If it's important, don't say it through text. Don't have an important conversation. Don't break up with someone via text.
Yes,
Don't tell
please.
somebody why you're upset via text. It's just never going to land, no matter how many
Yeah.
exclamation points and emojis you try to add.
Use your text messaging, be there in 5 minutes, or, try to keep your text messaging to be very, beneficial as far as the logistics. But if there's anything that needs to be expressed, like Jean was saying, where it involves any kind of emotional feeling that's important, how's it going to land? You really want to be able to, have that opportunity for the help of body language. So I think we've given some pretty good tips today in a quick period of time.
Yeah, and I want to add that paying attention to how you feel before a conversation is really important as well, because a lot of times
Yes,
we can't mask how we're feeling and it's going to
yes.
come out. So if you're upset about something, it's not a good time to have a serious conversation with somebody about something else, right? Because it's just not going to land well. Or if you're like super anxious, or you haven't eaten, they call it the hangries, when you're hungry and you get you get angry.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not the best time to maybe go on a first date, so these are the kind of things too, is that pay attention to how you feel. And to your point about body language impacting how you feel on the inside, there are a couple of tricks that you can do to shift how you feel. Number one is I'll always suggest that you check in before you have to have a big conversation with somebody, or a first date, or something that's important to you, or a job interview, on how you feel, and be able to identify it so you can move it. You have to, name it to tame it, so they say, right? So naming it first. There's a great TED talk on power posing, and the data is mixed on this. At first, there was a study that confirmed power posing, and then there was a study that said maybe not so much. So now it's kind of in the middle. But I will say this: I have practiced this technique. I have coached a lot of teens, with Battle of the Books and Outdoor Adventure Club and competitions with cheerleading and things like this. I also, just coach a lot of adults and in performance and public speaking, and I have used it. So I will speak from my personal experience that I do feel like it works. And it's kind of silly, but I will link the TED Talk in the description to watch it. But it's basically, you pick a superhero that you love, and for 30 seconds before you go in to do the public speech, or you go in for the job interview, or you go in for the first date, you do a power pose and you hold it in the mirror for 30 seconds if you can, but it doesn't have to be in the mirror. So mine is Wonder Woman. So I'll kind of do the Wonder Woman pose, and I'll arch my back. But with the kids, before we would do a competition or a speech and debate or something, we'd be like, everybody get their power pose going. And what that does is it kind of creates that alpha energy. It builds that confidence. It also helps get us more into that power feeling. So that can be very beneficial before a competition or before a job interview. And 100% paying attention to how you're sitting throughout the day. When I need to turn my day around, and again, this might be psychosomatic, but it works. Even if it's placebo, if it works, it works. I will smile, and to myself, I'll just smile and I'll just say, positive things about the day. This is going to be the best day ever. This interview, I'm going to crush this interview. I got this. And then I'll like just kind of Wonder Woman. I totally got this. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. And I swear it changes my mood, like from, oh God, I don't want to do this. I'm so tired. I don't want to teach this class, to, yeah, I love my job, or, whatever I have to go in. So smiling, just smiling can help boost serotonin and dopamine in the body, and you can fake it till you make it. So that's one of the things that you can do to help soften the energy that you were talking about. That, like, if you're coming in hot and you don't mean to come in hot, you number one need to know that you're coming in hot because maybe it's not the right time
Yeah.
for a conversation, or maybe you need to text someone and say, I'll be in 5 minutes. So sorry, I'm running late, and just take 5 minutes to meditate or take your shoes off and sit in the sun, because that's going to actually preserve the relationship more than going in and taking it out on that person. And being in communication and saying, I'll be in 5 minutes is okay. You can give yourself 5 minutes to breathe if you're coming in from a very stressful drive before you have to take a meeting or something like that. So, body language, tone, eye contact, energy. These are going to be your secret weapons when you really start to pay attention to how you're showing up. And again, we can't control the and the eye rolls on the other side, but we
Show how you
can.
respond to it.
Exactly, and how it's going to land for us. So the trick is, okay, he's rolling his eyes right now. It might mean he's disagreeing with what I'm saying, but it might not. And I've worked with enough clients to know, and we've worked on these kind of like nervous tics, that some people just have nervous tics, or their face just looks like they're angry when they're not. We've had to work on, like with some clients, just work on softening the face, because you just have a face that looks angry when you're not. And a trick for that is just putting your tongue at the top of your mouth can soften the face. If you're somebody who has like more of a tight kind of restrictive face, it just kind of softens it a little bit, and lifting the eyebrows a little bit. Just, yeah. So these are ways that we can pay attention to, and we can definitely use them in negotiations. We can use them in dating. We can use them in job interviews. But we can also use them in just how we show up with our friends and our loved ones, to make sure we're doing everything we can to have a nice dynamic in the communication.
Now, what you were saying about checking in with, how you're feeling before the communication, uh, that's real important. There's a saying that your energy shows up before your words do, and that's
Mm,
whether it's an email, a text, or
yeah,
verbal.
that's right.
So wherever you're going, your energy is showing up first. So check in with that. I love that you said that, G, because it's just so important. And I think that all these communication tips can really help. But what it helps us in the strongest way is with self-awareness. And the
100%.
other thing too, when you're talking about the power poses, that's big in NLP, neuro linguistic programming. I mean, that's a thing, and it's extremely effective. And people who are at the top of their game, they understand that stepping into their power and really, that mindset. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Absolutely. So, here are some tips and tricks.
Yeah.
If you have any that you like to use, add it to the drop down box below. If you have any questions, as usual, we love to get our content from you guys. You can hit us up at globalholisticcoaching@gmail.com. If you're interested in any of the courses we offer, communication courses, or getting in for coaching or counseling with one of us, or we have a whole wonderful team of certified global holistic coaches that you can also book with on our website. And you can reach us at globalholisticwellness.com. And so I'm going to tilt my head and wave and say, see you next week.
Have a great week, everybody.
Have a great week.